and welcome to GameSack. In the last decade or so, crowdfunding a game's budget has become increasingly popular, but do the games themselves always deliver? At first I was going to talk about a few games like Shenmue 3 and Bloodstained, but I already have dedicated episodes for both of those. There are so many games I could be talking about instead, like this one. Battle Princess Madeleine was kickstarted in 2017. It had a goal of 60,000 Canadian dollars and over 212,000 Canadian dollars were pledged by the time it ended. This one had some good stretch goals, like adding side quests and hidden levels. It also had ones that weren't very enticing, like expanding the digital art book and increasing the size of a plush toy. The description of the game describes it as in the vein of Ghouls and Ghosts and Wonder Boy 3, a mix of fast-paced classic arcade action with adventure elements. The game itself was delivered in 2018 as it was already well in development at the time of the Kickstarter. You play as Madeleine, who was named after the creator's daughter. She's being read a story by her grandpa. In it, her dog gets zapped by a bad guy and dies, and now he's a ghost dog. Ghost dog. Ghost dog? Ghost dog. He follows you around in the game and helps you. The game delivers on being a cross between Wonder Boy 3 and Ghouls and Ghosts. It has towns and quests like a proper Wonder Boy or Monster World game, and the action controls just like Ghouls and Ghosts. In fact, it takes the awesomeness of being able to shoot up and down from Ghouls and Ghosts and adds the double jumping mechanic that was so incredible in Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Finally, the best of both worlds. Well, once you discover the double jump boots, that is. The game is fun to explore and there's certainly lots to do. You can count on doing a little bit of backtracking as well. The only thing I'm not sure if I like or not is how the lives are handled. Once your life bar runs out, you die, but you respawn at pretty much the same place as you died. Eventually though, you'll instead respawn back at the last door you entered. The main issue with this is that nowhere does it tell you how many lives you have remaining like an actual arcade game. Instead, the way it works is that your dog Fritz has a meter over on the upper right. As long as he has at least half of his power meter full, he can revive you. If not, you get sent back. So you need to make sure to keep killing enemies so that he can soak up their energy. It's kind of like Sonic with the rings, I suppose, except not like that at all. It does kind of take a little bit to get used to. There's also an arcade mode which is 100% action, like Ghouls and Ghosts, with absolutely no Wonder Boy inspiration in sight. Well, except maybe for collecting the coins. The lives are handled the same way here, except that if your ghost dog runs out of energy to revive you, you get sent back to the very beginning of the stage. And they're not short. All in all, this is a really good game. Not an amazingly great game though, as I feel the control could be a little bit better. It sometimes seems like there's a little bit of lag. Also, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the stage design decisions, as there seem to be a lot of leaps of faith. For example, I get here and I kill this enemy plant hanging from above. Then I guess I just need to leap all the way across, but yeah, I usually just land right where I was before. The graphics give a perfect 32-bit feel and the music is pretty good as well. Because I'm the world's biggest idiot, I ordered the physical version from Limited Run Games on the Switch, which is called Battle Princess Madeleine Royal Edition, which is actually a Switch exclusive. I should have ordered the PS4 version, which is the original game. For whatever reason, they decided to put only the arcade mode on this one and redesign its stages. And the game is now in 4x3, which honestly makes the game worse because sometimes it feels like enemies attack from off the screen. There was really no reason to make this in 4x3 when it was in 16:9 before, so I'm a bit perplexed by this decision. This version does cost less than the original Battle Princess Madeleine, and you can get it on the eShop as well. It's still a good game though, don't get me wrong, and it's still quite challenging with excellent graphics and music. Both editions of the game feature an FM version of the soundtrack, which makes it sound kind of like a 16-bit Capcom arcade game. This is a nice throwback that's fun to listen to, but I prefer the full-blown scores a bit more here. Overall, I do feel this one lived up to the promises of the original Kickstarter. The original game is available on the Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, Wii U, and the Vita. Yooka-laylee from Playtonic Games is a spiritual successor to the Banjo Kazooie series from Rare. It's made by a lot of people who used to work for Rare, and they came together in 2015 to start a Kickstarter asking for £175 to fund basic production. Well, it raised that, and more, in the first 40 minutes, so needless to say, fans wanted to see more Banjo Kazooie action, for whatever reason. It ended up raising over £2 million, which, needless to say, broke records at the time, especially for video game projects. Did I mention that it was needless to say? Because it was needless to say it, but I said it anyway. I just say lots of needless things because I myself am needless. Oh well. It came out for the PC, Mac, Linux, PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One in April of 2017 and December of 2017 for the Switch. And that's the version I happen to be playing here today. And yes, it's fairly similar to the first two Banjo Kazooie games. You play as Yooka, who is a green chameleon, and Laylee, who is the purple bat that's always affixed to you. The characters themselves are all actually quite likable and colorful. You have your double jump, your spin attack, and even a roll move to get up steep hills. You also learn new moves as you progress through the game. Okay, I've got to be straight with you guys. I could never really get into the Banjo Kazooie games very much, and as a result, I probably don't like this one as much as you think I should. I tried playing it several times over a few different days to see if my opinion might change, but it never did. Anyway, you have a free-roaming world to wander around in, more or less, talking to different characters, and, well, I just kept getting extremely bored and found it difficult to keep paying attention to the game. Every fiber of my being was telling me to stop playing despite paying $14 to have it in this episode. I think that's because there's not much focus in the game as you play. Also, there's lots of talking. Everyone has a bunch of things to say, and it all feels like it's written for small children. Though I will admit, some of it is humorous. One thing that I found interesting is that while there are certainly things to collect here, there are nowhere near the level of things to collect compared to Banjo Kazooie. At least not in the parts of the game that I played before I gave up. Still, I'm not sure if fewer collectibles is a good or a bad thing. On one hand, I kind of get annoyed collecting tons of different things, but on the other, I feel that this game just needs more to do sometimes. The visuals are very colorful and look really nice, but they run at a pretty low frame rate, at least on the Switch anyway. I don't know if it runs a bit better on other platforms. The camera can sometimes be an issue, as is usually the case in many 3D platformers. Depth perception can also sometimes be an issue, like here where I was trying to grab this arcade token. Come on, where are you, exactly? I've got to admit though that I adore the design of Trouser, the snake who wears pants. I mean, why would a snake wear pants? That's why I love it. The music is okay at first. Some of it sounds like it's for really young kids, and honestly, it can get a bit annoying before too long. Suffice it to say, this is not the game for me. I remember people on social media complaining about this game either before it was released or right after. I can't remember why though, as I didn't care much, as you can imagine. So maybe the game itself is just not up to snuff. Did this game deliver? I have to admit that I'm not at all qualified to answer that question, as I'm certainly not the target audience. But I just want to say that for over £2 million, I think this probably could have been a little better. If you're a Banjo Kazooie fan, maybe you can tell me if it was worth it for you. Like I said, I've been hearing mixed things from fans of the series, so let me know what you think. Sometimes a game's crowdfunding campaign can fly under the radar, like this next one, which I never even heard of until right before I downloaded a demo for it on the Wii U. And I only did that because Corey from My Life in Gaming told me that I should. He loves this game. Freedom Planet began as a Sonic the Hedgehog fan game back in 2012 using characters and possibly personas from DeviantArt users. But designer Steven DiDuro wanted to create a more original work, so he ditched the Sonic universe. He made a demo and his studio, Galaxy Trail, launched a Kickstarter campaign in 2013. Over $25,000 were raised and the game was released on Steam. A few stretch goals were met, like hiring more programmers to help out. Another stretch goal was for the voice cast to play through the game in character, which really isn't that great of a stretch goal in my opinion. $25,000 isn't a lot of money to make a game on. Still, over the years, Freedom Planet came to Linux and Mac, then to the Wii U, PlayStation 4, and then finally the Nintendo Switch, which is the version I'm playing here. You play as a dragon named Lilac and you're trying to stop a big meanie from taking over the galaxy. You can also choose to play as Carol and eventually Mila when you unlock her. There's a lot here to remind you of the Genesis Sonic the Hedgehog games, but it's mainly just the stage design. You have a double jump and you can attack by spinning your hair. You also have a special dash attack as long as your meter is full. Below that meter is your life, which is represented by a series of red leaves. You can take quite a few hits and also replenish your life by gathering more leaves when you see them. There are also lots of blue crystals to collect in order to earn extra lives. The stages look like they're from a Sonic game and you make your way through them exactly like Sonic would. Most of them are pretty long, just on the cusp of getting tiresome, but fortunately most of the stages know when to end. The game controls well, though sometimes it feels like I have a bit too much momentum when I jump. There are lots of bosses to fight, and these are all pretty fun. These aren't necessarily overly challenging, but they're still very enjoyable while they last. The story mode features lots and lots of voice dialogue. You might enjoy this, but I honestly didn't find it very interesting. Eventually, I just began to skip each of the cutscenes. This ended up being more of a task than I thought it would be because there are many cutscenes back to back, and you need to skip each and every little segment. Keep doing this, and eventually you'll get to the next stage. There's an arcade mode that doesn't have all of this, but I don't know if you can unlock stuff like other characters if you just played this mode and not the story. Speaking of the other characters, Carol is supposed to be a wildcat and she plays kind of like Lilac, but she slashes with her claws as her main attack. She does a rapid kick for her special and you can keep pressing the button until the meter runs out. Sometimes you'll encounter a gas can and she'll pull out her motorcycle and ride through the stage. Of course, you can keep attacking while you're on your bike. Mila is a basset hound and she plays almost entirely different. She can flap her ears and spend a lot of time in the air while she jumps. She also doesn't have much of a main attack except conjuring up stone blocks from the netherworld and then tossing them. She can also pick up things that are laying around and throw them. She brandishes a shield for her special. All in all, the graphics are pretty good with some nice scrolling. However, I wish the Kickstarter had reached its $30,000 stretch goal and then the pixel art would have been even better. Less than $4,000 away. Oh well. The music is really good and it makes the game even more enjoyable to play. Overall, I feel that this one exceeded its Kickstarter as it delivered so much without a ton of money pledged. I mean, honestly, I'm quite blown away how much they did with only $26,000. Freedom Planet 2 has been in development for a while. It should be out pretty soon and I am definitely looking forward to it. Road Redemption from Dark Seas Games began its Kickstarter in April of 2013 and eventually made over $173,000. It was finally released in 2017. It was inspired by Road Rash, which was a popular motorcycle racing series which featured violence and stuff. This is considered to be a spiritual sequel. A lot of people kept telling me that I should try this, but it never really looked that appealing to me, mainly because there wasn't much color. But hey, I figured this would be a good episode to finally give it a go, so I downloaded it for the Switch since it seems I'm using the console for everything else in this episode. The game offers a campaign as well as a classic quick play mode. I started with the campaign and honestly didn't care much for it. It gives you missions like defeat so many of these guys, but it can be hard to even catch up to the enemies before you reach the finish line. Then I tried the classic quick play mode and I thought it was much better. I recommend that everyone starts here before going to the campaign mode. This one actually plays like Road Rash set in a post-apocalyptic world. You can bash enemies with weapons, but your main goal is to survive and finish in the top 3. They made sure that every single button does something, which can feel a bit overwhelming in a racing game. You have buttons for attacking left and right as well as kicking and deflecting. Gotta be honest, I don't care much for deflecting attacks. I'm more aggressive when I play games and rarely do I like being defensive. You can also nitro your way past groups of enemies that will gather around you to beat you down, if your nitro bar has any fuel in it, that is. During the race there are icons that you can pick up to give you more nitro, different weapons, more jet fuel, and what have you. Yes, jet fuel, you have jump jets in this game, and they're actually pretty fun. Some racers also have icons floating above their head, so that means if you beat them, you get whatever that icon is, like more nitro or some extra cash or whatever. The racing controls are honestly kind of wonky, and I blame that on the rather cheap ragdoll middleware. The physics are just kind of weird for a game like this. However, this game only made $173,000, so I need to be a bit more realistic with my expectations. With that said, they really did do a good job, all things considered. In fact, I really like some of the ideas in this game, like racing along the rooftops of buildings. That's crazy, and I like things that are crazy. Or this stage where it's literally raining cars, and then they start driving in your way. That's right, even more craziness. I love things that are absurd like this. Another idea that I like is that even if you're in first place, there will still be random motorcyclists to beat so you don't get bored. In Road Rash, if you were in first place, it seemed kind of lonely with no one to beat up. The graphics are kind of unremarkable because they don't have much color. Everything looks dead and same-ish as a result. Some of the music is pretty good, but a couple of the tunes can kind of grate on you. Keep in mind this is a relatively low amount of money to make a game like this, and I think they did a good job with it. Don't get me wrong, I still like Road Rash better, especially the Genesis and the 3DO versions, but I am glad that this game exists. This next one also flew under my radar until I noticed a physical version for it being offered for sale over a limited run. So I asked for some opinions and looked at some videos and decided to pick it up, and boy am I glad I did. But stick around after that because that game is full of controversy. Time Spinner by Luna Ray Games was crowdfunded on Kickstarter in 2014. It started out as a 2D Metroidvania style of game for PC, Mac, and Linux. That's right, Metroidvania without the Metroid or the Castlevania. But it reached a lot of stretch goals which put the game on consoles including the 3DS and the Vita. In fact, it raised over $176,000. Eventually, it came to other consoles as well. I'm playing the physical edition I bought from Limited Run Games for this episode. I mean, you just saw me put it in the Switch. This game is a love letter to Castlevania Symphony of the Night if I ever saw one. If you played and enjoyed that game, you'll feel right at home here. But this game is original enough to stand on its own. You're a time spinner and your goal is to go back in time and prevent the bad guys from attacking your people. As you'd expect, several shenanigans happen along the way. You have orbs for weapons and you can equip them in both hands. As you progress, you'll get new orbs that you can equip. You'll also get necklaces and rings which can give you special powers like this charge shot, or maybe even this giant sword attack. There's also plenty of equipment to find and buy which will help your attack, defense, and magic abilities increase. And yes, there's experience points in this game and you level up. The good news for most people will be that it doesn't feel like you need to grind much at all. By the way, sometimes this game tells you to press what the equivalent of the Switch's start button would be. But to me it looks like it wants me to press the D-pad. Yeah, no, the Switch's D-pad symbol looks like this. I've never used the controllers that came with the system, nor would I in 100 years. Instead, I use the expensive ProPad thingy, so graphics like these are always confusing for me. Especially since that's the exact shape of the ProPad's D-pad. Oh well, moving on. In addition to Symphony of the Night, the creator also took inspiration from Star Ocean for its story and Mega Man X for some of its gameplay elements. One technique that I really like is being able to stop time for limited periods, just as long as you have sand in your hourglass. If you get stuck, maybe try looking for an enemy that you can freeze time on and then using him as a platform to get further. That's what I did because I'm smart. No, it did not take me 10 minutes to figure this out, definitely didn't. They really dialed in the gameplay on this one. You can tell a lot of time and care went into each and every spot of the levels. I really like the time travel aspect too. This allows you to have different maps to explore, each with their own percentages to fill. The control is perfect and I never struggled to remember where any of the functions were, and it's all very natural. I mean, except for that D-pad thing, just forget I said that. And moreover, the game is extremely fun as well as quite engrossing. Going in, I didn't think I'd care about the story very much, but it's actually pretty cool. Visually, I love what they did here. In fact, I love it more than most pixel art games. This is because it attempts to recreate the style of Symphony of the Night down to a T. And I don't just mean the art style, I mean the style of the PlayStation's 2D graphics. The game is window boxed, meaning you have black borders on both sides as well as top and bottom. It appears that the artwork was created in a retro resolution and then scaled exactly 4 times, integer style. That means there's no shimmering during the scrolling. Of course, you can turn on a border if you want, but that's not for me. Being in almost but not quite 4x3 is fine for this game because unlike Battle Princess Madeleine, it wasn't originally in 16:9, so you're not losing anything here. It was designed this way from the get-go. The music is also outstanding, presented in a similar gothic style as Symphony of the Night. Again, it holds its own quite well and it really helps with the game's atmosphere. This game could totally be a real Castlevania game with just a few story changes, and it's even better than a few of the portable entries we got in that series. For me, this game is excellent and it absolutely delivers. I'm very happy that it received the funding that it did. Finally, let's talk about Paprium for the Genesis from Watermelon Games. You may remember Watermelon if you've ever heard of Pure Solar, which was a pretty darn good RPG for the Genesis released at the end of 2010. It was actually a fairly successful game on all fronts and was even ported to modern consoles and even the Dreamcast. It even has a hell of an awesome strategy guide, look at this. Watermelon wanted to make more games for the Genesis, and it goes without saying that Genesis fans wanted that too. In September of 2012, Watermelon started a website called Magical Game Factory, and this is when things started to get weird. Emphasis on the word started. You see, Watermelon is headed by Gwenaël Gode, better known as Fonzie. Apologies if I mangled the French pronunciation of that name there. Anyway, Fonzie is rather eccentric, but he is also extremely talented in pretty much everything he does. In fact, a few years before Pure Solar was released, I gave him some video that I made and he digitized it and made it run on the Sega CD. This was the first time, to my knowledge, that any Sega CD homebrew FMV had been done. As a result, it's a bit primitive compared to what others can do these days, but needless to say, I was totally blown away at the time. I mean, I was looking at myself moving around on my real Sega CD. Anyway, back to the Paprium story. In order to crowdfund the game, Watermelon used the Magical Game Factory site instead of something like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Users would register on the site, buy gems for around 10 cents each or so, and then apply the gems to the projects that they had listed. It was a rather bizarre way to do things. First up was a new Genesis game called Project Y. The game achieved what it needed to proceed while keeping pre-orders open indefinitely. Every once in a while, you could vote on the direction the game would take, but only if you had invested enough gems. The more gems you had, the more your vote counted. If you wanted your vote to count more, you'd have to buy more gems. And people did. Backers voted for a beat-em-up. Later, they voted to add some RPG elements to it, like maybe River City Ransom or something. Who knows what Watermelon would come up with, but it would probably be awesome. So time goes on with a few updates on the progression here and there. After a while, it starts to get quiet in regards to Project Y. It missed its initial release date of 2013 by a long shot. And then BAM! On March 27, 2017, Watermelon releases a teaser trailer for the game on its YouTube page. The game is now called Paprium. Yes, Paprium. Okay. This was a very well-produced video that clearly cost a lot of money. I mean, you don't just get mostly naked golden muscle-bound dudes anywhere. At least I don't. I have to pay big bucks for them. I imagine you do. This trailer was very, very Fonzie. He didn't want to be seen as a homebrew developer. Oh no, he wants to be seen as a legit company with real resources. They even announced a Genesis arcade stick at the same time that you could get. And finally, we were seeing clips of the actual gameplay, and it looked pretty awesome. It even included an enhancement chip which was supposed to add extra audio channels. People were hyped. I mean, come on, who wouldn't be hyped for the DT128M16VA1LT enhancement chip? Seriously though, the music to this game is incredible. I hope we get the chance to hear all of it in the future. A new website called Paprium.com opened up and a new batch of pre-orders began. Around this time, the character designer and artist for the game, Lewis Martins, contacted me. Even though I had already pre-ordered the game, they wanted to send me a copy when it was available so I could show it on GameSack. In the meantime, they sent me the most amazing thing regarding Pure Solar. I mean, who wouldn't love a 64 meg belt buckle? Lewis also sent some original artwork he had done, which is of course amazing, and I still cherish this. Yeah, they were buttering me up, I admit it. But then, once again, things got quiet regarding the game, with next to no updates. It was then revealed that Watermelon had issues with PayPal freezing their account. Another time, an airline somehow lost nearly complete builds of the game. People were understandably not happy. Sometime in 2018, I received an email from Watermelon inviting me to go to France because there was going to be a Paprium party showing off the game in a month or two. I believe that most, if not all, backers of the game received this same email. Well, the party happened and it was kind of a disaster. The game was clearly in a very early state and often had glitches or would crash. There were no enemies to fight and no sound at all. Supposedly, the enhancement chip was difficult to work with and caused issues. There's likely much more to the real story than this concerning why such an early version was shown. But ever since then, nothing of significance has been heard on the game except that it's still planned for release. Lots of people started asking for refunds in their disappointment, and lots of people actually received them. But not everyone. There's now no way to contact Watermelon for a refund, and the purchase section on the Paprium website is crossed out. As of May 2020, when I'm recording this, the world is still waiting, so it's pretty safe to say that Paprium has not lived up to its crowdfunding goals and that a great many people are disappointed. I sometimes wonder if they spent all of their money on marketing instead of the actual game. I never got my refund, but I never requested one either. On May 16th, a tweet showing a cartridge with Paprium and Watermelon stickers on it was posted. Does this mean anything, or is it just another tease? Also, the Magical Game Factory website was taken offline. The Paprium website remains up. If you want a super detailed version of this story, be sure to check out the 3-part documentary called What Happened to Paprium on ST1KA's channel, not sure how to pronounce that, but it even has interviews with lots of former Watermelon employees and contractors. Links are below. If Paprium is ever actually released, hell yes I will cover it here on GameSack. I'd probably even do a dedicated episode because that would be huge news. Now, you might think that I'm being naive, but I do believe that we will eventually see this released. I just wish I could say when. And there you go, every single game that's ever been crowdfunded. I didn't miss one. Well, actually, I missed a ton, like the new Toe Jam and Earl game, or new-ish. I wanted to talk about that one, but it'll have to wait till next time. Anyway, what are some games that were crowdfunded that you think are worth checking out? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Well, I decided to go with the Nintendo Switch exclusively for this episode because as a gamer and more importantly a YouTuber, the Nintendo Switch it really does meet all of my needs. The PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they suck. Who would want either of those? I mean, I don't even want a game on a PC because seriously, the Nintendo Switch is as good as you're gonna get. It has what, 3,000 teraflops? It has like up to 60 frames per second on this thing. One of my favorite features about the Nintendo Switch is like the addition of the minus and the plus button. I mean, it seems kind of weird, but it can do basic algebra for you. So if you want to know what B plus Y is, or you want to know what up minus A is, Nintendo Switch is going to let you know. One other thing that I think is great about the Switch is that it uses these cards instead of CDs. Now the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they both still use CDs, which is, I mean, who uses CDs anymore? But they store the games on these cards, and what's great is these cards are completely edible. I love them. I mean, what else could you want in a video game system? I remember when the PlayStation was coming out and I was looking at its controller in the magazines and I saw this segmented D-pad and I thought, You know, that's really stupid. Why have, you know, different buttons for each direction when you can just have something that pivots, like the NES controller or the Genesis controller or whatnot? And then I got it, and it's like, you know, it's actually one piece. It pivots. And honestly, it's just never really did much for me. I didn't like it. But thankfully, the Switch fixed that, because you can actually press all 4 directions at the same time. You don't get any better than that. I'm not tasting very good right now. The Switch really does have all the buttons you need. It has your traditional face buttons, your excellent D-pad, your dual analog sticks, and I like the L and the R buttons, and the ZL and then the ZR triggers. And it even has these 2 little buttons back here, which come in really handy during some games, and I know this because I'm a professional gamer. Hey, I'm on the Switch! Oh, hey. Neat. Oh man. Oh. So am I going to become one of those Switch channels that covers nothing but Switch games and gets like hundreds of views per episode? Probably, because I do want those kinds of numbers. The Nintendo Switch. Say it into the camera. The Nintendo Switch, my preferred platform for this episode. Oh, I think I'm going to throw up. Should not have eaten that.